Hi there. So my name is Rylan Scholes, and I'm going to be giving this presentation on the fall of the Soviet Union and the top-down democratization that took place in the country from the period of 1985 to 1991, and how that is the quintessential example of top-down democratization. So I think it's important to define what the Soviet Union is for anybody that doesn't know. So the Soviet Union is a global superpower at the time. So there's two global superpowers at the time: the United States and the Soviet Union. And the Soviet Union, or USSR, stands for the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. It's the biggest country or union of countries on Earth at the time. So you can see that there's 15 countries here, including Russia. So you have a lot of Central Asian states. You have these states on the Black and Caspian Seas here, and then you have a lot of Eastern European states like Ukraine, Belarus, and the Baltic states. And you can see the Kremlin here, which is their equivalent to like the capital or the White House. This is where the government is being run. And then here's the most important person for the story, right below that photo, Mikhail Gorbachev, who is the general secretary of the Communist Party, or essentially the president or authoritarian dictator at the time. And he's eating some Pizza Hut here. So what is top-down democratization? So Britannica defines top-down democratization as when leaders of an authoritarian regime implement democratic reforms because they have become convinced that reforms are necessary for their regime's survival. So we can see a lot of examples of this, especially in this scenario. But in order to fully understand the top-down democratization and the scale of it, we need to kind of look back further to understand why these democratic reforms were necessary for regime survival. So we can look at this here, which is how the Soviet government is structured before 1985 in Gorbachev's reign, I guess. So we can see that the Central Bureau, or the central bureaucrats, which is a handful of the most, not a handful, but around 100 to 200 of the most powerful communists in the nation, run everything. They call all of the shots. There are no checks and balances to power. They have pure authoritarian power over the entire country. And any efforts that have been made to kind of decentralize this system, because this central system was set up by Joseph Stalin in order to consolidate his power. And after Stalin's reign, Khrushchev comes in and he tries to kind of decentralize this, and it fails because the central bureaucrats do not like, unsurprisingly, don't like them getting their power taken away from them. And there's this kind of back and forth between, they try to decentralize, but the central bureaucrats intentionally sabotage that. So when Gorbachev comes to power, there is this still extremely powerful central power. This central the central bureaucrats rule the entire nation along with the dictator, or the general secretary. So this is when Mikhail Gorbachev comes into the story. So Gorbachev, or Gorby, as the Russians lovingly nicknamed him, understood that this extremely centralized government, where people are being censored, and only a handful of people are controlling the largest country in the world by landmass, um, from an office building in Moscow. Uh-oh. So sorry about that. The recording program I'm using isn't super great, and I am feeling under the weather, so my voice is not fully there. But this is Mikhail Gorbachev. He would become General Secretary of the Soviet Union in 1985, and he understood the danger that having this central government would have because of the failures of Central and Eastern Europe at the time. So he would implement two policies called Glasnost and Perestroika. What do these mean? Well, Glasnost means openness. It would allow for freedom of speech, freedom of expression, um, open and free democratic style elections for the first time in the Soviet Union in 1989, and loosening of state-owned media censorship. And then what is perestroika? Well, perestroika means restructuring, and it was an economic restructuring of the country to try to westernize it. It allowed for international companies to move into the Soviet Union for the first time. As we can see here, here's McDonald's opening in Moscow, and you can see all the people flocking to go eat some burgers at McDonald's, I guess. It also allowed for for-profit businesses, and it allowed for the ability to go bankrupt if companies were being economically inefficient. So how did these turn out? Not too great. So Glasnost would be a failure because the central bureaucrats, who were really, really powerful, as we talked about earlier, didn't like their power being taken from them, like also mentioned earlier. So they would attempt a coup against Gorbachev to try to reinstate the old Soviet Union, where the central bureaucracy had full power. And we can see here Boris Yeltsin, who had become the president of the Soviet Union after its collapse. He's standing on a tank here, denouncing the coup and calling for the collapse of the Soviet Union. And then perestroika would be a failure because this newfound bankruptcy for economic inefficiency would lead to unemployment for the first time in the Soviet Union. And for the first time in the history of the Soviet Union, employment wasn't a guarantee. And this scared a lot of people. Now, why is this important? So we can see here that Glasnost and Perestroika, or these attempts, these democratic reforms here, were solely made as an attempt to conserve the regime. And that is the quintessential example of top-down democratization. We can look at this and say, yes, these policies, Glasnost and Perestroika, were exclusively made in order to try to preserve the Soviet Union. Mikhail Gorbachev, he's what is considered to be a socialist idealist, or which in more common terms, that means that he believed that socialism was worth saving, and these democratic reforms, in his eyes, were the only way to save socialism in his eyes. So we can see here that the Soviet Union would collapse and would form 15 separate countries here. We can see Russia there, and then here's Boris Yeltsin to the side. He would become the president of the Russian Federation after the collapse, and then right below him is a picture of the modern skyline of Moscow, because Moscow in the Russian Federation is a capitalist country now. And how is Russia doing today? So not so hot. There's a lot of democratic backsliding. Russia isn't considered to be a democratic country anymore. We see that we have Mr. Putin here, and then here to the right of him is Alexei Navalny, one of the many Russian political poisonings or assassination attempts. And so there's a lot of sliding back to the era of the Soviet Union. So I just thought that was very interesting and worth mentioning. So that's my presentation here, and thanks for watching. Sorry that my voice is not doing so hot. And yeah, thank you.